In this story, a woman receives a wedding invitation from the ex-husband who betrayed her and destroyed her life. He expects her to arrive broken, defeated, forgotten. But what he doesn't know is that she's been rebuilding in silence for 18 months. And when she finally walks into his wedding with confidence, truth, and a shocking comeback, everything he believed about her shatters. This story reminds us of a powerful lesson. Never underestimate someone who chooses silence after betrayal. Sometimes the quietest people are preparing the strongest comeback. If this story inspired you, please support the channel with one like and one share so we can keep bringing you more powerful stories like this. Thanks for watching.
The envelope was made of expensive, cream-colored paper. It was the kind my ex-husband, Garrett, always claimed we could never afford. But this was not a bill, or a late notice, or another reminder of my financial struggles. It was a wedding invitation. Garrett was marrying Tessa, the woman he abandoned me for 4 years ago. And he had the nerve to invite me to watch him finally get his happy ending. The note inside simply said, "No hard feelings." No hard feelings about the affair, the messy divorce, or how he took everything and left me with just $700 a month to rebuild my shattered life. I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at that invitation for hours. I sat there while my twins were at school and my coffee grew cold. Then my eyes landed on the date, June 15th, our anniversary. He had deliberately chosen the day we got married to marry someone else. In that moment, I made a choice. I would go to that wedding. But I would not be the poor, broken ex-wife he expected to see. I was going to show him exactly what he had thrown away. And I had 18 months of secrets on my side to help me. My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how I showed up at my ex-husband's wedding on a billionaire's private jet with our children by my side. I was there to ruin his perfect day just by speaking the truth. So stay with me, because he never saw what was coming next. The expensive cream envelope lay on Rebecca Hartwell's kitchen counter. The apartment was silent, almost unnervingly so. Her children, Evan and Emma, were in class. Her coffee had been cold for an hour, but she hadn't moved a muscle. The invitation felt like a living thing, taunting her. She would pick it up, then set it down over and over. Her phone was right there. She could call her friend, Diane. She considered tearing the invitation into 1,000 tiny pieces and pretending it never came. Instead, she opened her laptop. An email from a man named Julian was waiting for her, still unanswered. She glanced back at the invitation. Garrett Michael Sullivan and Tessa Marie Brightwell request the honor of your presence. Her hand started to shake, making the heavy paper tremble. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. It was in his familiar script, the same handwriting that once wrote her love letters, and the same one that signed their divorce papers 4 years before. Becca, it read, I know this might be awkward, but I hope you'll come. The kids should see both their parents moving forward, both of us happy. No hard feelings. Best Garrett. No hard feelings. She read the phrase 3 times, and each time it made less sense. No hard feelings for cheating on me, for the divorce, for taking almost everything in the settlement, leaving me with $700 a month and seeing my children only on weekends. She checked the date one more time, just to be sure. June 15th. Her breath hitched in her throat. June 15th was their anniversary, the day they were married 12 years ago. It was the day she had worn her grandmother's veil and promised to love him for the rest of her life. He had picked that exact day to marry another woman. The invitation slipped out of her hand and landed face up on the counter. A memory suddenly flooded her mind. It was 4 years ago, almost to this very day. Garrett had come home from his job early. She was in the kitchen, and the twins, who were only 4 years old, were happily building block towers and knocking them down. She was making his favorite meal, spaghetti. He just stood in the doorway, loosened his tie, and looked at her with completely empty eyes. "We need to talk," he said. Those 4 little words changed her world forever. "I want a divorce." There was no explanation, no warning, and no opportunity to try and fix what was broken. She remembered the wooden spoon falling from her hand, splattering red sauce all over the floor and her shirt. "What? Why, Garrett? What are you talking about?" He replied. "I met someone who understands me, who supports my ambitions, someone who isn't this." He waved his hand vaguely at her, at the kitchen, at the life they had built. "Someone younger, someone prettier, someone who isn't worn out from raising toddlers." She whispered one word. "Who?" He answered, "Tessa." Tessa, her own friend, a woman who had been a bridesmaid at their wedding, the same woman who had attended their vow renewal ceremony just 3 years earlier. Rebecca shook her head, trying to force the memory away, but more came flooding back. She remembered the divorce proceedings. Garrett's lawyer was a shark in an expensive suit. Rebecca's lawyer was fresh out of law school and was the only one she could afford. Garrett got to keep everything: the house, the savings, and the retirement funds. His lawyer argued that since Rebecca had been a stay-at-home mother, she had no career, no income, and no assets to her name. The lawyer said that being a mother had been her choice. So, she was awarded $700 a month in child support and got to see her twins on the weekends. That was all. The judge did not even look at her when he announced his decision. Rebecca blinked, and she was back in her kitchen, holding her cup of cold coffee. It had been 4 years of constant struggle. She worked 2 jobs that barely paid the rent. She made secret trips to the food bank so her kids would not know. She could not afford to throw them proper birthday parties. And for 4 years, Garrett's mother, Patricia, would call just to say things like, "If you had taken better care of yourself, maybe he would not have left you." It had been 4 years of only seeing Evan and Emma every other weekend, of missing their bedtimes, school events, and the day they each lost their first tooth. It had been 4 years of feeling like she was becoming invisible. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her photos. She found a picture from her wedding day. She was 27 years old, wearing a white dress with flowers in her hair, and her smile was so big it must have hurt her face. She did not even recognize that woman anymore. That woman had dreams. That woman believed in fairy tales. That woman, she thought, was a fool. Rebecca put her phone down and looked at the invitation again. No hard feelings. A hot, sharp pain twisted inside her chest. Her laptop made a sound. It was another email from Julian. She opened it. "Becca, I know you need your space, and I understand, but I am here for you whenever you are ready." "Always, Jay." Julian. Kind, patient Julian. She had met him 18 months ago at a coffee shop when she accidentally spilled a drink all over his laptop. Instead of getting angry, he just laughed. She did not find out he was a billionaire tech genius until their 5th date, when someone recognized him. Julian had accepted that she needed to keep their relationship a secret, and that her ex-husband could not find out. He understood that the twins could not meet him yet. Julian never complained. He never pushed her. He just waited. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Rebecca jumped, spilling the rest of her cold coffee on the counter. She was not expecting company. She looked through the peephole and saw a man in a suit. He looked serious and was holding a package that was marked confidential. Her heart started to pound in her chest. She opened the door. "Rebecca Hartwell?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "Please sign here." She signed the form, and he handed her the package, then left without saying anything else. Rebecca closed and locked the door, staring at the heavy, official-looking package. There was no return address. She opened it carefully. Inside, she found documents, airline tickets, and a handwritten note. "You do not have to hide us anymore," it said. "Let me be there for you." Let them see you the way I see you. You deserve to walk into that room like you own the entire world, because you do. Always, Jay." Her eyes filled with tears. Beneath the note were legal papers. She looked through them with a shaking hand. They were financial records, bank statements, and asset transfers, all with Garrett's name on them. There were accounts she never knew about, money he had hidden during their divorce, and properties listed under his mother's name. There were business deals that had been set up to hide his real income. It was clear, undeniable proof that he had lied. At the bottom of the stack, there was a note from a man named Marcus Caldwell, Garrett's business partner. It said, "Mrs. Hartwell, I should have said something 4 years ago. I was a coward. I kept records of everything. I am sorry it has taken me so long to come forward. This is enough evidence to reopen your case." Rebecca sank to the kitchen floor. The papers scattered around her. Julian had been investigating Garrett. For how long? He had been quietly building this case for her, without ever telling her. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Diane. "Are you okay? I have not heard from you in a few days. Want to get some lunch?" Rebecca looked at the message, then at the invitation on the counter, and finally at the proof spread all over her floor. She typed back, "Can you come over right now? I need you." 3 dots appeared on her screen almost instantly, followed by, "On my way, 15 minutes." Rebecca stood up and gathered the papers, putting them back into the package. She brewed a fresh pot of coffee, making it strong, just how Diane liked it. Then she picked up the wedding invitation one last time. No hard feelings. For the first time in 4 long years, Rebecca Hartwell smiled. But it was not a happy smile. 12 minutes later, Diane burst through the front door. "What is wrong? Are the children okay?" she asked. Then she stopped when she saw the look on Rebecca's face. "What did he do this time?" Rebecca handed her the invitation without saying a word. Diane read it, and then she read it again. Her expression changed from concern to confusion, and then to pure rage. "He invited you to his wedding? On your anniversary?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "That absolute—" Diane caught herself and took a deep breath. "Okay. And the note? No hard feelings? Is he completely insane?" "I think he actually believes it," Rebecca said. "Of course he does," Diane scoffed. "He is Garrett Sullivan, the man who can do no wrong." She tossed the invitation onto the counter. "Please tell me you are not actually going to go," Diane said. "I do not know, Di. I really do not know." Diane looked closely at her friend's face. She had always been able to tell when something was up. "There is something else, is not there? What is it?" Rebecca handed her the package. Diane began to read through the documents, slowly at first, and then her pace quickened. Her eyes grew wider with every page she turned. "Holy hell," she whispered. "He hid all of this from you during the divorce." "Apparently so," Rebecca said. "And Julian found it all." "Julian? Your Julian?" Diane asked. "He is not my Julian, Becca. We are not— It is complicated." "It does not seem very complicated to me," Diane said. Rebecca poured them both a cup of coffee and sat down at her small kitchen table. It was the one that wobbled because one of its legs was too short. "I met him 18 months ago at that little coffee shop on 7th Street. I spilled my latte all over his laptop. You told me this part," Diane said. "He laughed about it. We started talking, and he was just so kind and funny. He was present in a way that Garrett never was." Rebecca held her warm mug with both hands. "We started seeing each other. It was not serious at first, just coffee, and then dinner. But then I fell for him. And he fell for you," Diane added. "And he fell for me," Rebecca admitted. "But I could not tell anyone. Not you, not the kids, nobody. Because if Garrett ever found out I was dating someone, model, especially with a man who had money, he would drag me back to court and fight to lower the child support, arguing that I obviously did not need it anymore." Diane's jaw tightened. She said that sounded exactly like a move he would make. "So, we kept our relationship a secret, a total secret. There were no social media posts, and no going out in public. It was just the two of us, always in private, and Julian accepted it. He told me he understood my need to keep the twins safe, and he said he was willing to wait. Becca's voice trembled, just a little. He has been waiting for 18 months, Diane, and I keep pulling away from him. I keep pushing him back because I am so scared of what might happen. I am scared of everything. Scared he will leave. Scared he will decide I am not worth the trouble. Scared he will turn out to be just like Garrett. She shook her head. I know it is not fair to Julian. He has never once given me a single reason to doubt him. But I cannot stop feeling this way. Diane reached over the table and took Becca's hand in hers. You know you are not the one with the problem, right? Do I really? Garrett programmed you to believe you were. He spent years chipping away at your confidence, making you feel small. He made you think you should be grateful. He even stayed as long as he did. But that was all a lie, Becca. Every single word of it. Becca gently pulled her hand away and walked over to the window. Outside, the world seemed perfectly normal. People were walking their dogs. Children were riding their bicycles. He used to say I had no ambition. He told me I had let myself go, that I was boring. He was cheating on you with your own friend Becca. His opinion means nothing. But what if some of it was true? What if I really did let myself go? What if I became boring? Becca turned, her back to the window, to face her sister. I was so wrapped up in the twins, in keeping the house spotless, and trying to be the perfect wife. Maybe I lost sight of being interesting. Maybe I forgot how to be myself. Stop that. Stop what? Stop defending him. Stop making excuses for his behavior. Stop pretending like you did anything to deserve what he did to you. I am not doing that. Yes, you are. You are doing it this very second. Diane stood up and walked to her sister. You need to listen to me. Garrett Sullivan is a liar, a cheater, and a complete fraud. I mean that literally. The proof is sitting right there on that table. He stole money from you. He hid his assets. He broke the law. And you are standing here, worried that you were not pretty enough for a man like that? Becca's eyes started to burn, and she blinked rapidly. I see the woman in our wedding pictures, and I do not recognize her. I have no idea where she went. She is still right here. She has just been knocked down for so many years that she forgot how to get back up. The tears finally started to fall, hot and fast and full of anger. Diane wrapped her arms around her. Becca cried into her sister's shoulder, letting out 4 years of grief she had held inside. I am just so tired, Diane. I am so tired of the struggle, of pretending that I am okay. I am tired of acting like everything is fine when I feel like I am drowning. I know. I work 2 different jobs, and I still do not have enough money to buy the kids new shoes. I cannot afford to take them on a vacation. I feel like I cannot give them a single thing. You give them your love. That is more than Garrett ever did. Is that really enough? It is everything. They stood like that in the middle of the small kitchen until Becca's sobs started to fade. When it was over, Becca pulled away, wiped her eyes, and gave a weak laugh. I got snot all over your shirt. I have 3 children. I have had much worse things on my shirts. They returned to the table, and Diane poured them both more coffee. So, what are you going to do? Diane asked. About the wedding invitation? About Julian? About any of this? I do not know. It feels like I have 2 options, right? I can take all this evidence to the court, make Garrett's life a living nightmare, and get the money I am rightfully owed. Becca took a breath. Or I can just show up at that wedding. I can let him see what he foolishly threw away. I can let him see that I am not broken anymore. Those 2 things do not have to be separate. You can do both of them. Can I really? Why not? Give the evidence to your lawyer, get the paperwork filed, and while all of that is being processed, you show up to his wedding with a billionaire on your arm. Show him exactly what he lost. That just feels so petty. Good. Be petty. He deserves petty. Honestly, he deserves much, much worse than petty. Becca let out a real laugh this time. It felt unfamiliar, almost rusty. Julian wants to be there with me. He already sent plane tickets for all of us. Wait, plane tickets? As in more than one? For a private plane. His plane. He wants to fly us all there. Me, the kids, and you too, if you want to come. Diane's eyes grew wide. Your boyfriend owns a private plane? He is not my boyfriend. Becca corrected, then sighed. Okay, fine. My boyfriend has a private plane. And you were sitting here, worried that you are not interesting enough. Girl, you are dating a man who owns his own plane. You have basically won the lottery for interesting people. In spite of everything, Becca couldn't help but smile. He wants to meet the twins for real. He says we have been hiding for long enough. He is right about that. But what if they do not like him? What if they love him? That could be even worse. Diane just shook her head. You cannot shield them from everything in life. And you cannot protect yourself from everything either. Sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith. Becca glanced down at the invitation again, then at the stack of evidence, and finally at her sister. He sent me that invitation because he thinks I am still that broken woman. He wants his new wife, Tessa, to see me struggling. He wants the whole world to see that he got an upgrade. Then you need to show him that he is wrong. How do I do that? You show up looking like $1 million, with a man who truly treasures you, and with your children, who absolutely adore you. You walk in there like you own the entire world. Because you know what, Becca? You do. You always have. You just forgot for a little while. Becca got up and walked back to the window, looking down at the street. Somewhere out there, Garrett was busy with his wedding plans, probably laughing about the invitation he had sent her. He had no idea what was about to happen. Okay, Becca said, her voice soft but firm. Okay, what? Okay, I will do it. I will go to that wedding. I will take Julian with me. I will take the kids. And I will walk into that celebration like I own the entire place. A huge grin spread across Diane's face. That is the sister I know. But there is something I have to do first. What is that? Becca took out her phone, went to her messages, and found Julian's contact. She typed out her message slowly and carefully. I am ready. Let's do this. All of it. No more hiding. She pressed send before she could second-guess herself. A reply came back in under a minute. I was hoping you would say that. When can I see you? Becca smiled. A genuine smile this time. Tonight. Come over tonight. It is time for you to meet my sister. And soon, you will meet my kids. I will be there at 7 o'clock. Diane read the message over her shoulder. Tonight? You are really introducing him tonight? No more waiting. No more hiding. If I am going to do this, I am going all in. Good. It is about damn time. They cleaned up the kitchen side by side and put the stack of evidence in a safe place. They hung the wedding invitation on the refrigerator with a magnet. It was a reminder. It was a challenge. As Diane was about to leave, she turned around. Becca? Yeah, I am so proud of you. You know that, do you not? For what? For surviving all of this. For fighting back. For finally remembering who you truly are. Diane left, and the door clicked shut behind her. Becca stood there in her quiet apartment, alone once more. But this time, the silence felt different. It was not empty or suffocating. It felt purposeful and calm. The invitation was still on the fridge. June 15th, that was 2 months away. 2 months to get ready, to make plans, to transform. 2 months for Garrett to believe he had won. And then, she was going to show him just how wrong he really was. I was not the problem. I understand that now. But for a long time, I believed every single word he told me. 7 o'clock arrived much faster than Becca had anticipated. She had spent the entire afternoon cleaning. The apartment was not even dirty, but cleaning always helped when her world felt like it was spinning out of control. She scrubbed the bathroom floor, vacuumed the living room rug, and organized the twins' closet. Red shirt, blue shirt, red shirt, blue shirt. Fold, stack, repeat. The steady, repetitive motion helped to calm her racing mind. At 6:45, she glanced at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing jeans and a soft sweater, with her hair down and just a little makeup. She looked normal, but she did not feel normal at all. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was Julian. Parking now. Be right up. Her heart did a little flip. She pressed a hand against her chest and took a deep breath. This was just Julian. Kind Julian. Patient Julian. There was absolutely nothing to be afraid of. The doorbell rang. She opened it, and there he was. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple shirt. He could have been any other man except for his eyes. Those eyes always seemed to see right through her. "Hi," he said in a soft voice. "Hi." They just stood there for a moment, feeling as awkward as two teenagers. He held up a bottle of wine. "I brought this. I hope that is all right." I was not sure what to get. She pulled him through the doorway and kissed him deeply. He dropped the bottle of wine and caught her, kissing her back with equal passion. When they finally pulled apart, they were both a little out of breath. "Hi," she said again. He laughed, and it was that warm, genuine laugh that always made her heart ache in a good way. "Hi yourself." They picked up the bottle of wine, which had somehow survived the fall, and went into the kitchen. Becca poured them each a glass, her hand trembling slightly. "You are nervous," Julian noted. "Yes. Do not be. It is just me. That is exactly why I am nervous." He looked at her with a frown. "I do not understand. Because this is finally real. It is not just us sneaking around anymore. It is not just secret dinners and hidden moments. This is real life. Diane knows about you. Soon the kids will know. And then everyone will know. And that scares you? It terrifies me." He put his wine glass down and took both of her hands in his. "Becca, look at me." She met his gaze, those incredible eyes. "I am not him. I know you are scared that I will become him, that I will leave you, that I will hurt you. But I promise you, I will not. I am not Garrett. You say that now. I will say it to you every single day for the rest of our lives, if that is what you need to hear." She wanted so desperately to believe him. "He told me he loved me too. He said it on our wedding day and when we renewed our vows. He said it on every anniversary. He said all the right things, and then he still left. I know. So, how am I supposed to trust that you will not do the exact same thing?" Julian was silent for a very long moment. Then he said something she never would have expected. "You do not. Not yet. Trust is not something that is just given. It has to be earned, and I have not earned yours yet. But I will. I will earn it every single day, one day at a time, until you finally believe me." Her throat felt tight. "What if that takes years? Then it will take years. What if I am just too broken? What if I can never really trust anyone, ever again?" "Then we will figure that out together. But you are not broken, Becca. You are hurt. There is a very big difference." The tears started to fall again. She was so sick of crying all the time. He pulled her into his arms and just let her cry into his chest. He did not try to fix anything. He just held her. When she finally leaned back, she gave a weak, watery laugh. "I am getting your shirt all wet. I have other shirts. You know, this is becoming a habit. First, there was coffee on your laptop, and now there are tears on your shirt. I am a destructive person. You are a perfect person. I am really not. To me, you are." She looked up at him then. "This man, this kind, patient, impossible man. You had Garrett investigated. You gathered all that evidence. You built an entire case against him without even telling me. He at least had the decency to look ashamed." "I did it," he confessed. "I'm sorry. I should have asked you first." "So, why didn't you?" "Because I knew you would tell me not to," he said. "That you would insist on not causing any trouble. That you would try to protect him, even when he does not deserve it. So I went ahead anyway. That is incredibly arrogant of you. Yes, it is. I apologize. Do not apologize. I am not angry. She paused for a moment. I am thankful and completely terrified and very confused. He is everything Garrett told me I was not good enough for. He is successful, generous, and he acts like I am the most remarkable person he has ever met. That is what scares me. Why? Because what happens when you finally figure out that I am not? What happens when you see that Garrett was right? That I am uninteresting and ordinary and not worth all this trouble? Julian gently held her face between his hands. Becca, listen to me very carefully. You are not uninteresting. You are not ordinary. You endured 4 years of absolute misery and came out on the other side still a kind person, still a caring person, still willing to fight for your children. That is extraordinary. That is nothing short of heroic. I do not feel very heroic. Heroes almost never do. The doorbell chimed again. Becca flinched. That must be Diane. Should I go hide? No, no more hiding. Remember? She opened the door to let her sister inside. Diane took one look at the two of them and smiled widely. Am I one? Oh, am I interrupting something? Yes, Becca said simply. Good. I wanted to finally meet the mysterious billionaire boyfriend. Julian offered his hand. Julian Ashford, it is a pleasure to meet you. Diane shook it, studying his face before looking back at Becca. Okay, I give my approval. You cannot give your approval after only 30 seconds. Just watch me. He has kind eyes. He made you smile. That is more than Garrett managed to do in 10 years. Approved. Julian chuckled. That is the quickest character judgment I have ever had. I am an efficient person, Diane said as she poured herself some wine. So, about this wedding, what is the strategy? They gathered around Becca's unsteady kitchen table and began to make their plans. I think we should all attend, Julian proposed. Becca, you, the children, and you too, Diane, if you want to come. Oh, I absolutely want to come. I would not miss this for anything in the world. But we have to approach this intelligently, Julian went on. Garrett has no idea about me or about us. So when we arrive, it has to have an impact. Impactful in what way? Becca asked. A private jet. That is the first step. We show up in style. We will make a big impression before we even step into the room. Diane grinned. I admire your way of thinking. But that is not the most important part, Julian said, taking out his phone. He showed them what was on the screen. This is... Becca's eyes grew wider as she read. You plan to show this to Tessa's family at the wedding? Not at the wedding. Afterwards, during the reception, done discreetly. Her father has a right to know what kind of man he is investing in. Tessa's family is wealthy? Diane inquired. Extremely. And Garrett's company is failing. He has been stealing money and concealing his losses. Her family is about to invest $1 million based on numbers that are completely fake. If we remain silent, they will lose every penny. Becca slowly shook her head. So this is not really about getting revenge. This is about protecting them. That is part of it, but it is mostly about getting to the truth. Garrett has been lying to absolutely everyone. To you, to Tessa, to her family, and to his business partners. It is time for someone to make him stop. Who else knows you have this evidence? Marcus Caldwell. He is Garrett's business partner. He is the one who gathered all the documentation. He wants to help us. He feels terrible for not speaking up when you were going through your divorce. I remember Marcus. He always seemed like a nice man. He acted uncomfortable around Garrett sometimes. He was, and he still is. He wants to help set things right. They spent hours talking, making plans, and then changing them. By the time Diane was ready to leave, it was well after midnight. Julian also stood up, preparing to go. Stay, Becca said in a soft voice. He looked over at her. Are you certain? No, but I want you to stay anyway. He stayed. They lay beside each other in her small bed, not touching, just sharing the space. "Tell me about the first time you ever saw me," Becca whispered into the darkness. "It was at the coffee shop." "Yes." "You burst in. Your hair was a mess. Your bag was sliding off your shoulder. You ordered a large black coffee, no sugar. The barista said something to you, and you let out this real laugh. It was not a polite laugh. It was just completely genuine. And I remember thinking, I want to get to know that person, the kind of person who laughs like that. And then I spilled coffee all over your laptop. It was the best coffee spill of my entire life." She shifted to face him. "Why me? You could have anyone you want. Models, actresses, chief executive officers. Why a single mother with no money in a coffee shop?" "Because you are real. Because when I am talking with you, I am not Julian Ashford, the billionaire tech genius. I am just Julian. Just me. And you seem to like me anyway. I do like you. That is the whole problem. How is that a problem? Because liking you means I have to trust you. And trusting you means I am risking everything. And I honestly do not know if I can handle being broken like that again." He rolled over to face her. "In that case, do not think about forever. Just think about this moment, right now. Are you okay right now? Yes? Then that is all that matters. We can deal with tomorrow when it arrives." She kissed him then. It was a soft, gentle kiss, filled with both promise and fear, and a little bit of hope. When she finally fell asleep, she had dreams about weddings and cream-colored invitations. She dreamed of entering a room full of people who all expected her to be small, and instead, walking in, feeling tall. "I have a decision to make. I can take this evidence to the court and put him through a terrible ordeal, or I can just show up at his wedding and let him see exactly what he lost. Both options feel like justice. Neither one feels like it is enough." The next 2 weeks went by in a flash. Becca filed the official documents, delivered the evidence to her lawyer, and began the steps to reopen her divorce settlement. Her lawyer, a very sharp woman by the name of Jennifer Martinez, reviewed everything with eyes that kept getting wider. "This is significant. This is very, very significant. Where did you obtain this? From a friend? That is quite a friend. This is enough to not only reopen your case, but to possibly bring criminal charges. Is that something you would like to pursue?" Becca considered it. She imagined Garrett in handcuffs. In a courtroom. In a prison cell. She once thought that was what she would want. But sitting there, in Jennifer's office, she understood something new. She no longer cared what happened to Garrett. Not really. She just wanted what she was rightfully owed. "Let's begin by reopening the case and getting a fair settlement. We can talk about criminal charges later on." Jennifer nodded. "A smart move, one thing at a time. How long do you think this will take?" "Months, possibly a year. These types of cases move very slowly, especially when the other person is going to put up a fight. And Garrett will definitely fight. This will make him look bad. Very, very bad." "Good," Jennifer smiled. "I like you. Let us go destroy him." Becca walked out of the office, feeling lighter and much stronger. She had completed the first step, which was the most difficult one. Now it was time for the second part. Julian wanted to have a proper meeting with the twins. The idea filled her with terror. She spoke to them with great care, sitting them down one evening after dinner. They were 8 years old now, old enough to grasp the situation. "Mom, you are making your serious face," Emma said. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetie, no trouble at all. I just have to talk with you about something." Evan set down his tablet. "Is this about Dad?" "No? Well, in a way. But it is mostly about me." "Okay." They both looked worried. "I have a friend, a very good friend. It is someone I have been spending time with, and he would like to meet you, if you are okay with that." There was silence. Then Evan asked the one question she had been dreading. "Is he your boyfriend? Because Dad told us you will never find anyone as good as him." The words felt like a physical blow. Becca struggled to keep her face neutral and calm. Your dad said that to you? Yeah. He said you are too. I do not know. He used some words I did not understand, but he said that nobody would ever want to date you. Emma nodded in agreement. He said you stopped taking care of yourself. He said that is why he left, because you got lazy. Becca's hands balled into fists in her lap, underneath the table, where the children could not see them. She had the urge to scream, to fly into a rage. Instead, she took a deep breath. Your dad is wrong. I did not get lazy. I was taking care of both of you, and that was very hard work. It was harder than any job I have ever had. We know that, Emma said right away. We know you work really hard. And about my friend, his name is Julian. He's very kind, and he is funny. And yes, he is someone who is special to me. But I need you to understand something. This is very important. They waited. No one is ever going to replace your dad. He is your father, and that is never going to change. But I am allowed to be happy too. I am allowed to have a person in my life who cares about me. Is that all right? Evan glanced at Emma, and they shared some sort of silent twin conversation. Finally, Evan spoke. Does he make you smile? Yes. Like, real smiles? Not the fake ones you make when Dad starts talking about Tessa? Becca's heart ached. They had noticed. Of course they had noticed. Real smiles. Then I guess it is okay. Emma nodded. When do we get to meet him? This weekend, on Saturday. We will all go to the park, maybe get some ice cream. We will just relax. There is no pressure. If you do not like him, we will figure something out. But I really hope you will give him a chance. Okay, they both said at the same time. That night, long after they had gone to sleep, Becca called Diane. He told them I was lazy, that I let myself go. He told them nobody would ever want me. That absolute. Diane cut herself off and took a breath. He said that to his own 8-year-old children? Apparently so. Becca, you have to write this down. Tell your lawyer. This is parental alienation. You can use this against him. I know, and I will. But right now, I just really needed to tell someone. Because if I do not say it out loud, I think I am going to scream. Then scream. I will wait. So Becca buried her face in a pillow and screamed. It was a loud, long, and furious sound. When she was finished, Diane spoke calmly. Do you feel better? A little bit? Good. Now you need to listen to me. Julian meeting the kids this weekend is a huge step. It is the right thing to do, but you need to get yourself ready. Ready for what? For them to adore him, because if they come to love him, and then he leaves, it will crush them. It will crush you. So you have to be positive, absolutely positive, that he is serious about this. I am sure. Are you? Because just 2 weeks ago, you were prepared to keep hiding him forever. Becca was silent. I am terrified. Every single day I wake up and I expect him to realize that I am not worth it, that he has made a terrible mistake, that he can find someone better. Those are Garrett's words, playing in your head. That is not the truth. How am I supposed to know the difference anymore? By examining the evidence. Has Julian ever once made you feel small? No. Has he ever criticized you, or put you down, or made you feel like you are less than him? No. Has he pushed you, or rushed you, or demanded anything you were not ready to give? No. He has been nothing but patient. Then you need to trust that. Trust the evidence that is right in front of your eyes, not the ghost that is living in your head. Saturday arrived much too quickly. Becca changed her clothes 4 different times. Nothing seemed quite right. She chose a simple and comfortable outfit of jeans and a soft blue shirt. Her new boyfriend, Julian, was scheduled to pick them up at 10 in the morning. He arrived in a normal car, not some flashy sports car, just a regular sport utility vehicle. The twins climbed into the back seat, their bodies tense and their faces guarded. Hi, Julian said, sounding a little nervous himself. I am Julian. It is really nice to meet you both. There was only silence. Then Emma asked, "How much money do you have?" "Emma!" Becca turned around in her seat. "You cannot ask people that." "Why not? I want to know." Julian let out a real laugh, not a nervous one, but one of pure amusement. "That is a fair question. I have more money than I need and less than I want." "That is not an answer," Evan pointed out from his seat. "You are right, it is not. The real answer is complicated, but the simple answer is enough to be comfortable, enough to help the people I care about. Not enough to solve every problem in the world, but enough to make a difference." Evan thought about this for a moment. "Are you trying to buy us? Because Dad's girlfriend does that. She buys us things and thinks that will make us like her." "I am not trying to buy you," Julian said gently. "I am trying to get to know you, and I hope you will get to know me. If you do not like me, that is okay. But I hope you will give me a chance." They drove to the park. It was not a fancy park, just a local neighborhood park with swings and a slide. Julian pushed Emma on the swings. He played a little basketball with Evan. He sat with Becca on a bench and did not even try to hold her hand in front of the kids. He was giving them space, giving them time, giving them room to adjust. After about an hour, Emma ran over to him. "Julian, can you push me higher?" Becca felt tightness in her chest. Emma had called him by his name. Not Mom's friend, just Julian. For lunch, they went to the kids' favorite pizza place. It was nothing special, but soon they were laughing and talking, acting like a normal family. Evan told Julian all about his math class, explaining how he loved finding patterns and numbers. Emma told him about her latest art project, a drawing of a dragon that could breathe different colors of fire depending on its mood. Julian listened, and he really listened. He asked smart questions and remembered the small details. When they got back to the apartment, the twins ran inside to play. Julian and Becca stood by his car. "They are amazing," he said quietly. "They liked you." "I like them," he replied. "What if they get attached? What if you—" He gently kissed her, cutting off her worried thoughts. "I am not going anywhere. I am here. I am all in," he continued. "Stop waiting for me to leave." "I am trying," she said. "Try harder," he whispered. She laughed and kissed him back. "Okay, I will try harder." That night, long after Julian had gone home, Emma climbed into Becca's bed. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "I like Julian. He is nice." "I am glad to hear that." "Is he going to be around a lot?" "Would that be okay with you?" Emma thought about it. "Yeah, I think so. He is not trying to be Dad. He is just Julian. That is okay." Becca held her daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I love you, Emmy." "Love you too, Mom." Evan came to her the next morning while Emma was busy watching television. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you going to marry Julian?" "I do not know, honey. We have not talked about that. Why do you ask?" "Because if you do, does that mean we have to call him Dad?" "No, baby, never. You already have a dad. Julian would just be Julian. He would be an adult who cares about you, but not your dad. Never your dad, unless you wanted that someday." Evan nodded, looking relieved. "Okay, because Dad is kind of mean sometimes, but he is still Dad. I do not want a new one." "You do not have to have a new one." "But Julian is okay," Evan added. "He actually listened when I talked about math. Dad always zones out." "I have noticed that," Becca said softly. "So, yeah, he can stick around." Becca hugged her serious, thoughtful boy. "I love you, Ev. Love you too." 2 weeks later, Garrett called. Becca stared at his name on her phone screen. She had not spoken to him in 6 weeks. He never called unless something was wrong. She finally answered. "Hello, Becca." "Hi, sorry to bother you," he said, his voice smooth and confident, and completely fake. "What do you need, Garrett?" "I just wanted to check in about the wedding. Make sure you are still planning to come. Tess has been asking." "I am coming." "Great. That is great. And just so you know, I know money is tight. The invitation says formal wear, but if you need to wear something simpler, that is totally fine. No one will judge. Her blood began to boil, slowly and steadily. I will be appropriately dressed. Of course. I was not suggesting. I just meant. I know what you meant, Garrett. There was a long silence on his end. Well, okay then. See you on the 15th. See you then? She hung up the phone and immediately grabbed it again to text her sister Diane. He just called to tell me it is okay if I cannot afford a nice dress. Diane's response was instant. Oh, he is going to regret that. Then Becca texted Julian. Are you sure about this? About all of it? His response came back in seconds. I have never been more sure of anything. Even the jet? She typed back. Especially the jet? She smiled and put her phone down. She looked at the calendar on the wall and counted the days. 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks until Garrett Sullivan learned the biggest lesson of his life. She did what she always did when she felt overwhelmed. She started reorganizing the kitchen drawers at midnight. Forks, knives, spoons, creating order from chaos. 2 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. Becca was at work, doing her morning job of data entry from home. Her phone rang. It was the school. Her heart stopped cold. The school never called unless something was terribly wrong. Miss Hartwell, this is Principal Morrison. I am calling about Evan. Is he hurt? No, nothing like that. But we had an incident today at lunch. Could you come in? She was there in 20 minutes. Evan was sitting in the principal's office. His lip was bleeding, and his knuckles were scraped. Another boy was sitting across from him, crying. What happened? Becca asked, her voice trembling slightly. Principal Morrison sighed. There was a fight. Evan hit Tyler. Evan does not hit people, Becca said immediately. I know. That is why I called you instead of suspending him outright. But he did hit Tyler. He hit him hard. Tyler's nose might be broken. Becca looked at her son, her quiet, gentle boy who organized his toys by color. Why? She asked him directly. Evan stared at the floor. He said something. What did he say? He said you were a gold digger, that you were dating a rich guy for his money, that everyone knows you are broke and desperate, and you are probably... He stopped talking. I cannot say the rest. They are bad words. The other boy's mother burst into tears. Tyler, why would you say such a thing? Tyler sniffled. Dad said it last night. He said Garrett Sullivan's ex-wife was dating some billionaire now, and everyone knows she is just after his money. He said it at dinner. I just repeated it. The room fell completely silent. Becca's vision narrowed. Who is your father? Mark Richardson. He works with Mr. Sullivan. Of course he did. Of course Garrett had told everyone. She knelt in front of Evan and took his face in her hands. You defended me. He was lying about you. I know. But we do not hit people, even when they lie. But, no, I know you were angry. I know you wanted to protect me, but violence is not the answer. Tears filled Evan's eyes. I am sorry. I know you are. She hugged him and held him tight. But you have to apologize to Tyler and accept whatever punishment Principal Morrison decides. They worked it out. Evan apologized, and Tyler apologized. Both boys received detention. In the car on the way home, Evan was quiet. How did Dad find out? He finally asked. About Julian? I do not know. I thought we were being careful. Are you mad? At you? No, never. At the situation? Very. When they got home, Emma was already there. Diane had picked her up from school. What happened? Diane asked. Why does Evan look like he went 3 rounds with a boxer? He defended my honor with his fists, Becca said, tiredly. Diane looked at Evan with admiration. My man, Di, do not encourage him. I am not encouraging violence. I am commending the sentiment. That night, after the twins were tucked into bed, Becca called Julian. Garrett knows about us. How? I do not know, but he is telling people I am a gold digger, that I am using you for your money. Julian was quiet for a moment. Does that bother you? What he is saying? Yes. No, I do not know. It bothers me that Evan got into a fight over it. It bothers me that people are talking about us, about me. Becca, Julian said gently, people are going to talk no matter what. If you are with me, they will say you are after money. If you are alone, they will say you are bitter and pathetic. If you date someone poor, they will say you have no ambition. You cannot win, so stop playing their game. It is not that simple, she argued. It is exactly that simple. The only opinion that matters is yours, and your kids, and maybe your sisters. Everyone else can think whatever they want. It does not feel like enough. Then what would be enough? She thought about it, really thought about it. I want him to see, not just that I am with you, but that I am okay, that I survived, that I am stronger without him. Then that is what we will show him, Julian said firmly. The next day, Garrett called. She let it go to voicemail. Becca, we need to talk. I heard you are seeing someone. I think that is great, really. I am happy for you, but I need to know if this is serious. Because if it is, we need to discuss how this affects the kids, and the custody arrangement, and the child support. Call me back. She deleted the message and called her lawyer instead. He is fishing, Jennifer said. He wants to know if he can reduce payments now that you are dating someone with money. Can he? Not unless you are married. Dating does not change anything legally. But he will try. Men like Garrett always try. What do I do? Ignore him. Do not engage. Let him stew. And when we go to court with our evidence, we will bury him. Becca hung up, feeling a tiny bit better. Emma came home from school that day with a drawing. It was a family portrait. It showed her, Evan, Emma, and a tall man with kind eyes. Who is that? Becca asked, even though she already knew. Julian. He is part of our family now, right? Do you want him to be? Yeah, he is nice. And he makes you laugh. You do not laugh when Dad is around. That night, Julian came over. He brought pizza and played video games with Evan. He looked through Emma's art portfolio, studying every single drawing of her dragons. You are really talented, he told her with sincere admiration. You think so? I know so. Have you ever thought about taking an art class, like a real one, with a teacher? Mom says they are too expensive. Julian looked over at Becca. What if I knew someone who teaches art to kids? Someone who might be willing to take on a new student? Julian, you do not have to do that. I am not doing this because I have to, he replied gently. I am doing it because Emma is talented, and she deserves a chance to develop that talent. Emma's eyes grew wide. Really? You will do that? If it is okay with your mom, Julian said, looking at Becca. Becca's throat was tight with emotion. It is okay with me. Emma wrapped her arms around Julian's neck in a tight hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Over Emma's head, Julian's eyes met Becca's. His look was clear and steady. This is real. Stop waiting for it all to fall apart. Later that night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the couch. They were not touching, but they were close. You are good with them, she said softly. Becca spoke quietly. They are easy to be good with. Evan got into a fight today because someone said, I was using you. I heard, she said. You are not upset? Why would I be upset? He defended someone he loves. That is admirable. He hit another kid, and he got detention. He learned a lesson, Julian countered. That is what matters. He shifted on the couch to face her directly. Becca, I need to tell you something. Her stomach dropped. What? I am all in. I am completely committed to you, to the kids, to all of it. I know you are waiting for me to run, but I am not going to. So you need to decide. Are you all in too? Or are we going to keep doing this dance? A dance where you push me away every time we get close. I am scared, she whispered. I know, he said gently. What if this does not work? She asked. But what if it does? They sat in silence in her small apartment, surrounded by her worn furniture and the sound of her leaky sink. Julian looked around the room as if it were a palace. I love this place, he said. It is tiny, and it is falling apart. It is where you built a life, he answered, where you raised your kids alone, where you survived. It is incredible. She kissed him then, a slow and deep kiss full of fear and hope and new possibilities. I am all in, she whispered against his mouth. I am terrified, but I am all in. That is all I needed to hear. Just then, the phone rang. It was Garrett again. She ignored it. Julian smiled. Good choice. He is going to keep calling, she said. Let him. You have nothing to say to him. 2 days later, a call came from Patricia Sullivan. Becca almost did not answer, but her curiosity was too strong. Hello? Rebecca, it is Patricia, Garrett's mother. We need to talk. I do not think we have anything to talk about. It is important. Please. I am asking you, not telling you. Please. Something in her tone made Becca pause. Okay. Where? That little Italian place on 5th Street, tomorrow at noon. Please just come. Patricia hung up before Becca could argue. Becca stared at her phone and immediately called Diane. Garrett's mother wants to meet with me. You mean the woman who spent 10 years making your life a nightmare? That Patricia? Yes, that one. Why? I do not know, but I am going to find out. I am coming with you, Diane stated. You do not have to do that. I am coming. That is not negotiable. If she tries anything, I will be there. End of discussion. So the next day, they walked into the restaurant together. Patricia was already seated in a corner booth. She looked older than Becca remembered, and she seemed tired and sad. Thank you for coming, Patricia said, as they sat. What do you want? Diane asked, getting straight to the point. Patricia ignored her and looked directly at Becca. She really looked at her. I owe you an apology, Patricia began. A massive apology for everything. Becca just blinked, stunned. What? I was horrible to you for years. I was the one who pushed Garrett toward Tessa. I thought she was a better match, with her wealthy family and her social connections. I honestly thought I was helping my son. I was wrong. So very wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Becca asked. Patricia's hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. Because Garrett's business is failing. It has been failing for 2 years. Tessa's family money is the only thing keeping it from going under. The wedding is not a celebration of love. It is a business merger. And he is lying to them about absolutely everything, she finished. Diane leaned forward. How do you know all this? Marcus told me, Patricia said. Garrett's business partner. He has been documenting everything because he feels guilty. He wants to make things right. Why now? Becca asked again. Patricia met her gaze. Because I watched what my son did to you. And now I am watching him do it to another innocent woman. I am so tired of protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. She reached into her purse and pulled out a large folder. This is everything. It is more than what you already have. There are bank statements and text messages in here. There are emails. It is proof of every single lie he told during your divorce. Becca took the folder, her hand shaking. Why are you giving this to me? Because you deserve better. You deserved so much better than what I helped him do to you. I cannot fix the past, but maybe I can help change the future. They sat in the quiet restaurant. The woman who had made Becca feel worthless was now handing her the very keys to her own justice. I do not know what to say, Becca admitted. Say you will use it, Patricia urged. Say you will stop him. Say you will not let him do to Tessa what he did to you. Becca looked over at Diane, and her sister gave a firm nod. I will use it, all of it. Patricia nodded, then stood up to leave. Patricia, Becca called out. Are you going to the wedding? I have to. I am his mother, but I will not be celebrating. She paused for a moment. I hope you walk into that room like you own it, because you do. You always did. You just forgot for a while. After she left, Diane and Becca sat in silence. Well, that was unexpected, Diane finally said. That was... I do not even know what that was. Redemption, maybe? Or guilt? Or both? Becca opened the folder and flipped through page after page of evidence. This is everything, Becca breathed. This is more than enough. So, what are you going to do? Her sister asked. Becca closed the folder and looked directly at Diane. I'm going to that wedding. I am walking in there with Julian and my kids, and I'm going to show everyone exactly who Rebecca Hartwell is now. Hell yes, Diane said, and they high-fived across the table of pasta. For the first time in 4 long years, Becca felt like she was finally winning. He thinks I am still that same woman, she thought. The one who apologized for her own existence. The one who made herself small so he could feel big. That woman is gone. 10 days before the wedding, Garrett called again. This time, Becca answered. Hello, Garrett. Becca, good. I have been trying to reach you. I have been busy. Right. Look, I wanted to talk to you about something. About this guy you are seeing. His name is Julian. Right. Julian, the billionaire tech guy. That Julian? Yes, she said. There was a long silence on his end of the line. She could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he recalculated everything. How long have you been seeing him? Why does that matter to you? Because if it is serious, we need to renegotiate the custody arrangement and the support payments. Everything. And there it was, the real reason for his call. We are not renegotiating anything, Garrett. Becca, be reasonable. If you are with someone who has that kind of money, you do not need my support anymore. Actually, legally, I still do. Dating someone does not change a thing. We would have to be married for that. There was more silence, even longer this time. Are you planning to marry him? That is none of your business. It is my business if it affects my financial obligations, he snapped. Her blood began to boil, slowly and steadily. Your financial obligations, not your children, not their well-being, your money, that is all you have ever cared about. That is not fair, is it not? You have been trying to reduce your payments since the day we divorced. You fought me on everything, every penny, every single weekend, because it was never about the kids for you. It was about control. It was about winning. I am getting married in 10 days, he said. Can we not do this right now? You are the one who called me, she reminded him. You brought this up. So yes, we are doing this now. He let out a long, condescending sigh that she remembered all too well. Look, I was trying to be civil, but fine. I will see you at the wedding. Please try to dress appropriately. I know money is tight, but Tessa worked really hard on this. I would hate for you to embarrass her. She should have hung up the phone. She should have just let it go. Instead, she said, I will be appropriately dressed. Do not worry about me. Great. And Becca, I know this is hard for you, seeing me move on. But I hope we can be mature about this, for the kids. For the kids, exactly, she agreed. They need to see both their parents happy and moving forward. You're absolutely right. They do need to see that. So, we are good? He asked. We are perfect. She hung up the phone and sat in her quiet apartment, shaking with fury. Diane arrived 15 minutes later. Becca had not called her, but Diane always seemed to know. What did he say? Becca told her everything, every single condescending word. Diane began to pace back and forth across the small living room. I want to punch him. I really, really want to punch him. Get in line, Becca said. How are you so calm right now? I am not calm. I am furious, but I cannot show it. Not yet. Not until the wedding. Diane stopped pacing and looked at her sister. You have changed. Do you know that? 2 months ago, you would have apologized to him. You would have made excuses for him, but not now. Now you are standing up for yourself. He gave me no choice. No, Diane corrected. You chose this. You chose to stop letting him control you. That is different. They sat down together. Becca made them some chamomile tea. I need to talk to you about something, Becca said. Something I have been thinking about. Okay? This wedding. This whole thing with Julian and the private jet and showing up like I own the place. A part of me wonders if I am doing it for the wrong reasons. What do you mean? Diane asked. Am I doing this to finally be free, or am I just doing this for revenge? Diane thought about it for a moment. Does it have to be one or the other? Does it not? I do not think so. I think you can want both. You can want to be free of his control, and you can also want him to see that you are okay. That you survived, that he did not break you. But what about Tessa? Becca asked. She is just collateral damage in all of this. She is about to marry a liar and a fraud, and we are going to expose him at her own wedding. That feels cruel. So do not think of it as exposing him, Diane suggested. Think of it as saving her, because that is what you are really doing. You are saving her from making the exact same mistake you did. She might not see it that way. Probably not. Not at first. But eventually she will understand. She will be grateful. Becca sipped her tea. It was still too hot. You were so bright, Diane said suddenly. Back when you two first started dating, you used to light up every room you walked into. By the end, you were like a ghost. I know. Do you? Because you still sound like you think you deserved what he did to you. Silence filled the room. Say it, Becca. Say you did not deserve it. I did not deserve what he did, she said quietly. Louder. I did not deserve what he did. Again, I did not deserve what he did. She was screaming now and crying. Years of suppressed rage and pain came pouring out. Diane held her sister, letting her scream and cry until she had nothing left. When Becca finally stopped, her throat was raw and her face was wet, but she felt lighter. She felt better. Diana's advice was simple. Good. Now feel that anger. Let it build up. Use that feeling when you walk into his wedding and show him the incredible woman he lost. That night, sleep was impossible for Becca. She rose from her bed at midnight into the quiet of her apartment. She started to clean everything, from the kitchen to the bathroom and the living room. She wiped down baseboards, washed windows, and even cleaned behind the refrigerator. When her world felt like it was spinning out of control, cleaning was her anchor. She scrubbed until her hands were sore and her back was aching. She did not stop until the sun began to rise. The apartment was immaculate, and she was completely drained. There were still 10 more days to get through. Julian's call came at 7 in the morning. Did you manage to sleep? He asked. How could you tell I did not? She replied. Because I know you, he said softly. What is wrong? Becca sighed. Garrett called yesterday. He wants to talk about changing the child support agreement now that I am dating you. I am not surprised, Julian said. He also warned me to dress appropriately. He claimed money was tight, and he did not want me to cause a scene for Tessa. Julian was silent for a moment. Then he said, Let me have his number. What? No. Why would I do that? Because I am going to phone him and tell him exactly what I think about him, Julian stated. Julian, no, that is not the way. Becca, he interrupted firmly, he does not get to speak to you like that. He does not have the right to make you feel small. Not this time, she said. This is my battle to fight. It is something I have to take care of. You do not have to do it by yourself, he insisted. I know that, she replied, but I need to do it on my own. Does that make any sense to you? He let out a long breath. Yes, it makes sense, but I do not have to like it. You do not have to like it, she agreed. You just need to have faith in me. I do have faith in you. Completely. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about small things and big things. Marcus Calwell had agreed to assist. He planned to be at the wedding and would approach Tessa's father at the reception. He would present the evidence then. It was a big gamble and could easily go wrong, but it was the moral thing to do. 8 days before the wedding day, Patricia called once more. Rebecca, I am so sorry to bother you again, but there is something you need to know. What is it? Garrett senses that something is not right. He has been asking me questions about money, about the business, and about Marcus. He is getting very suspicious. Did you reveal anything to him? Becca asked. No, never. But he is becoming paranoid. He is watching everything and everyone. Please be careful at the wedding. He will be on high alert. I will be careful. Thank you for the warning. Rebecca, just one more thing, Patricia added. Yes, I am so proud of you. For standing up for yourself, for fighting for what is right, and for being so much stronger than I ever was. Patricia ended the call before Becca could say anything back. 5 days before the wedding, the twins brought it up. Are we actually going to Dad's wedding? Emma asked. Yes, we are. Because he invited us, and because it is important for you to see both of your parents happy. Are you happy? Evan asked. I am trying to be, Becca answered honestly. Is Julian going with us? Yes, he is. Good. I like Julian, Emma said with a nod. Me too. He does not talk to us like we are little kids. He treats us like real people. Dad does that sometimes, Evan said, trying to be fair. Sometimes, Emma conceded, but Julian does it all the time. Becca's heart felt a pang of sadness. Her children deserved so much more. But her children were tough, strong, and kind. They were going to be fine. 3 days before the wedding, Becca found the perfect dress. Diane took her shopping at a boutique Becca would never have entered on her own. We are going to do this properly, Diane declared. No protesting. The dress was a deep emerald green, the very color Garrett used to say washed her out. She looked breathtaking. Oh, absolutely yes, Diane exclaimed when Becca emerged from the dressing room. That is the one. It costs too much, Becca whispered. It is perfect, and Julian has already paid for it. What? When did that happen? He called me last week. He told me to take you shopping and to get you anything you wanted. It was his gift. I cannot take it, Becca said. Yes, you can. Stop resisting and let someone else pamper you for a change. Becca gazed at her reflection in the mirror, at the woman looking back. She appeared confident, powerful, and beautiful. For the first time in 4 years, she saw herself again. All right, she said. I will take it. 2 days before the wedding, a text message arrived from Garrett. It said, Thank you for handling this with maturity. It means a great deal. The children are fortunate to have you as their mother. Becca read the message 3 times before a smile spread across her face. Her response was brief and simple. See you Saturday. It was calm and collected. He had no inkling of what was about to unfold, and that was exactly how she preferred it. She thought, I wasted so much time trying to be what he wanted. I failed to see that I was always more than enough. He was the one who was lacking. The night before the wedding, Becca found it hard to breathe. At 2 a.m, she was sitting on the bathroom floor with her back against the cold tub, a familiar tightness in her chest. It was a panic attack. She tried her breathing exercises, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8. Nothing worked. Her phone sat on the sink. She thought about calling Diane or Julian, but she knew this was her own battle. It was her fear, her doubt, her panic to conquer. What if this was all a terrible idea? What if arriving at Garrett's wedding with Julian only made things worse? What if the twins were caught in the middle and got hurt? What if she was just using Julian? What if Garrett had been right all along, and she was just after money? What if she was not as strong as she thought? What if she failed? The negative thoughts spun faster and faster. She lowered her head to her knees and began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her phone vibrated with a text from Julian. Cannot sleep either. I am thinking about you and about tomorrow. She looked at his words, her vision clouded by tears. With trembling hands, she typed a reply. I am so scared. His response was almost instant. I know you are. But you are not by yourself. I am here. Diane is here. The kids are here. You are surrounded by people who love and support you. What if I am not ready for this? She texted back. You are ready. You have been ready for years. You just had not realized it yet. She desperately wanted to believe his words. Her phone began to ring. Julian's name lit up the screen. She answered. Hi, she said in a whisper. Hi. His voice was gentle and warm. I could feel the panic in your text. Talk to me. I do not think I can go through with this, she confessed. Yes, you can, he said firmly. But what if— No more what ifs, he interrupted. Let's stick to the facts. Fact 1. You survived 4 years of misery. Fact 2. You raised 2 amazing children almost completely on your own. Fact 3. You rebuilt your entire life from the ground up. Fact 4. You are the strongest person I have ever met. I do not feel strong right now. That is because you are human, and humans feel fear. But strength is not about being fearless. It is about moving forward even when you are afraid. She listened quietly to the sound of his breathing on the line. Tell me something, she finally said. Anything. Why did you choose me? And I mean the real reason, not the story about the coffee shop. He paused for a long moment. Do you want the honest truth? Always, she replied. It is because the first time I saw you, you looked tired, stressed, and completely overwhelmed. But when the barista told a joke, you still laughed. It was a genuine laugh, in spite of everything. In that moment, I thought, that is the person I want to get to know. The person who can still find joy when life is difficult. The person who never gives up. The person who is a survivor. She closed her eyes as more tears fell. I am such a mess, Julian. You are human, he corrected. There is a big difference. What if tomorrow is a total disaster? Then it will be a disaster. But you will get through it, just like you have gotten through everything else. How can you have so much confidence in me? She asked. Because I see you. I really see the real you. Not the person Garrett tried to mold you into, and not the person you think you are supposed to be. Just you. And you are magnificent. She gave a weak laugh. That is a very powerful word. It is the only word that fits. They continued talking until the sky began to grow light, until her panic subsided, and her breathing returned to normal. Thank you, she finally said. For what? For not letting me get lost in my own head. Always, he replied. Now try to get some rest. It is a big day tomorrow. A big day tomorrow, she repeated. She ended the call, crawled back into her bed, and then stared up at the ceiling. Sleep never came, but the overwhelming sense of panic had disappeared. At 6 in the morning, she got up, made herself a coffee, and sat at her kitchen table. The wedding invitation was still on the refrigerator, as if it were taunting her. She pulled it down and looked at it for the last time. No hard feelings, she read aloud. And then she laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Garrett had absolutely no idea what her feelings were because he had never taken the time to ask. Diane showed up at 8 o'clock, armed with coffee, pastries, and an overnight bag. All right, she announced. We are doing the full works today. Hair, makeup, nails, the whole package. Dee, that is really not necessary. Nothing is too much for today. Today is the day you remind him of what he let go. Today, you will walk in there like a queen. I feel more like a court jester, Becca admitted. Then you will pretend until you believe it. By the time I'm finished with you, you will feel like royalty. They spent the entire morning getting her ready. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup was flawless, and her nails were painted a striking deep red. When Diane was done, Becca looked into the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked powerful, self-assured, and stunningly beautiful. Oh my goodness, Diane whispered. You look absolutely incredible. I look like a different person. You look like yourself, Diane corrected. The version of yourself you had forgotten was there. The twins returned from their sleepover at Diane's house. They paused in the doorway, their eyes wide. Mom, Emma said, you look like a princess. You look really pretty, Evan added shyly. Thank you, my sweethearts. Now go get yourselves ready. We have a wedding to go to. They hurried off to their rooms. Diane helped Becca step into the emerald gown and zipped it up. Becca turned and faced the mirror. The woman she saw was both a complete stranger and intimately familiar at the same time. Are you ready? Diane asked. No, Becca replied, but I am doing it anyway. That is my girl. Julian arrived at 1 o'clock, dressed in a suit that made him look like he had stepped out of a magazine. He stopped short when he saw Becca and just stared. What is it? She asked, feeling a wave of self-consciousness. Is the dress too much? You look stunning, he said. Absolutely stunning. The twins came out of their rooms, Emma in a soft blue dress and Evan in a small suit. Julian crouched down to their level. You two look fantastic. You look good too, Julian, Emma said. Thanks, Julian, Evan echoed. They all got into the large sport utility vehicle and drove to a private airport. The twins had never seen an airport like it before. It was small and exclusive, a place where the very wealthy parked their private planes. Whoa, Evan whispered. A real plane! Emma squealed with delight. Julian's pilot greeted them. He was friendly and professional. The jet was smaller than Becca had imagined, but it was filled with luxury. From the leather seats to the polished wood trim, the twins ran around exploring every part of the plane, pressing all the buttons and asking a million questions. Becca sat near the window and watched as the ground disappeared below them during the takeoff. Are you doing okay? Julian asked in a low voice. Ask me that again later, she replied. Fair enough. Throughout the flight, Diane kept everyone entertained with funny stories, keeping the atmosphere light and cheerful. But Becca's stomach was tied in knots. In just 2 hours, she would be walking into Garrett's wedding. In 2 hours, her entire life was going to change. Julian received a text message from Marcus Calwell, confirming he was at the wedding venue with the evidence ready to go. Would tell Tessa's father the whole story during the reception. The plan was in motion, and there was no going back. When the private jet landed, a fleet of expensive black SUVs was waiting. The twins were bubbling with excitement. This is the most amazing thing ever, Emma said with a huge grin. Evan chimed in, just wait until Dad sees us. A pang of sadness hit Becca. This was not about getting even. This was about finally revealing the truth, about seeking justice. It was about saving Tessa from the same heartbreak she had endured. I could resent her, and for many years I did. But she is just another woman he is tricking. This whole charade will not stop until somebody finally puts an end to it. They took the highway to the wedding venue, a large estate just outside the city. The grounds were beautiful, with rolling green lawns and huge white tents decorated with flowers. It was the kind of fairy tale wedding Garrett had always claimed they could never have. Well, here we are, Diane said, taking a deep breath. Here we are, Becca repeated. The SUVs stopped right at the main entrance. Other guests arriving in their ordinary cars stopped and stared. The doors of the lead vehicle opened. Julian stepped out first and then offered Becca his hand. She emerged, her emerald dress shimmering in the afternoon sun. Her hair was styled perfectly, and she held her head high. Diane got out next, followed by the twins. Emma waved to a face she knew in the crowd, while Evan stayed close to Becca's side. A wave of whispers started to spread through the onlookers. Is that Rebecca Hartwell? Someone murmured. Who is that man with her? Is that Julian Ashford? The Julian Ashford? Another person whispered. Did she really just show up in like a private jet? Becca moved forward, placing one foot calmly in front of the other. Julian's hand rested gently on the small of her back, a steady and reassuring presence. The wedding planner hurried toward them, looking completely flustered and panicked. I am so sorry, but there must be some sort of mistake. Are you on the guest list? Becca offered a cool, calm smile. Rebecca Hartwell, Plus 4. The planner frantically scrolled through her tablet, then checked it again. Mr. Garrett only listed a Rebecca. No guests, no children. There is no room at the table assigned to you. I am not sure where to put you. Julian spoke for the very first time. His voice was calm, but it carried a natural authority that made people listen. I am sure we can find a solution. The planner's eyes widened as she finally recognized him. Of course she did. Yes, of course, Mr. Ashford. Let me just... I will arrange something immediately. Please, come this way. They followed her into the beautiful chaos of the reception. The area was breathtaking. White flowers were everywhere, and crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceilings of the tents. The tables were set with fine china, trimmed in gold. It was all perfect and incredibly expensive, exactly the life Garrett always craved. As they walked in, guests turned their heads to watch them. The whispering grew louder. Across the lawn, Patricia Sullivan saw them. The color drained from her face. But then a small, genuine smile appeared. She walked toward them, her steps slow and deliberate. Rebecca, you look absolutely beautiful. Becca was taken aback. Thank you, Patricia. Patricia then looked at the twins. Hello, Evan. Hello, Emma. You both look so grown up and wonderful. Hi, Grandma, they answered quietly. Finally, Patricia turned to Julian and extended her hand. You must be Julian Ashford. I have heard so much about you. Julian shook her hand politely. I hope it was all good things. Patricia's smile was tinged with sadness. It was better than he deserved to hear. She turned her gaze back to Becca. I am so glad you came. Then, before Becca could think of what to say, she walked away. Diane leaned in close. Did Garrett's mother just give you a compliment? I think she did, Becca whispered back. The world must be ending. The planner, in a flurry of activity, had found them a table. It was near the back, somewhat out of the main view, but everyone could still see them perfectly. Becca sat down and took a steadying breath. A few tables away, she saw Lydia Monroe, who caught her eye and gave a small, supportive nod. Another friend. Another person who knew what really happened. It was almost time for the ceremony to start. Guests began to find their seats. Garrett appeared at the front, walking toward the altar. He wore a tuxedo, his skin was tan, and his hair was styled just right. He looked happy and confident, like a man who had everything he ever wanted. Then his eyes scanned the back of the room, and he saw them. A series of emotions flashed across his face, one after the other. Shock, confusion, and then a flicker of anger. His gaze locked onto Julian, and a look of dawning recognition crossed his face. Becca watched him put all the pieces together. She watched him understand exactly what was happening, and she gave him the smallest of smiles. Garrett's jaw tightened. He quickly looked away and faced the altar, but his perfect composure had been shattered. Becca could see the cracks. The music for the bridal march began to play. Everyone stood up. Tessa appeared at the end of the aisle, looking beautiful and so young. Her dress must have cost more than Becca's entire car. She walked toward the altar with a radiant smile on her face. Becca felt a sudden pang in her heart, but it was not jealousy. It was pity. This poor, sweet girl had no idea the kind of man she was about to marry. The ceremony began following all the old traditions. The officiant spoke in a dull voice about love, commitment, and sharing a life forever. Becca kept her eyes on Garrett's face. He kept glancing back at her, then at Julian, then at the twins. He was completely distracted and on edge. That was good. The time for vows arrived. Garrett's voice trembled just a little as he stumbled over the words. Do you, Garrett Michael Sullivan, take this woman? I do, Garrett cut in, speaking too fast, as if he was desperate to get it over with. Tessa shot him a look of concern. The officiant continued. Do you, Tessa Marie Brightwell? I do, Tessa said in a soft voice. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Their kiss was brief and a little awkward. The guests applauded, and Becca clapped politely along with them. The twins were getting restless beside her. "It is almost over," she whispered to them. "Can we go home soon?" Evan asked. "Soon, sweetie, soon." The ceremony was finally finished. Guests started moving toward the reception area for drinks, music, and conversation. Champagne was being served from trays. Becca stood next to Julian, while Diane stayed close by. The twins were happily drinking sparkling cider and eating cookies. It did not take long for curious people to approach them. "Rebecca, is that really you? Oh my goodness, you look incredible." "Thank you." "And who is this handsome man?" "This is Julian. Julian. This is... I am sorry. I cannot recall your name." "Susan. We met at the Christmas party 5 years ago." "Right, Susan." Susan's eyes were wide, taking in every single detail, from the expensive dress and jewelry to Julian's obvious wealth. "So, how did you two meet?" Julian answered without missing a beat. "We actually met at a coffee shop. She accidentally spilled coffee all over my laptop." Susan let out a laugh that was a little too loud. "How charming." "It was," Julian agreed. "It was the best day of my life." He said it with such sincerity because it was the truth. Susan made a quick excuse and hurried away, probably to share the gossip she had just learned. That same scene, repeated 6 more times, with different people, but they all asked the same questions with the same curious eyes. Becca handled each one with grace. She smiled, made polite conversation, and played her part. But inside, she was just counting down the minutes. Garrett finally came over during the cocktail hour. He was alone, as Tessa was busy taking pictures with her family. "Becca, you came." His eyes darted nervously to Julian. Then he looked at the children. "I did not realize you were bringing guests." "You said the children should see both of their parents moving on. This is part of their future. I wanted them to be here for it." Garrett's jaw was tight. "And who is this?" Julian extended his hand. "Julian Ashford. It is a pleasure to meet you." Garrett definitely recognized that name. Everyone in their circle did. A storm of emotions crossed his face. "How long?" he finally asked. 18 months, Becca replied calmly. "The children just met him last week." Garrett looked as if he had just been slapped across the face. "I see," he said, his voice strained. "And you thought bringing him to my wedding was a good idea?" "You're the one who invited me," Becca reminded him. "You said there were no hard feelings. I simply believed you." Garrett opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He tried again. "We need to discuss the custody agreement and the child support and—" "Not here," Becca said firmly, cutting him off. "Not today. This is your wedding day. You should enjoy it." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there speechless. Julian followed, with the twins close behind. "That was incredible," Diane whispered. "You completely shut him down." "I am shaking," Becca admitted quietly. "You did not look like it. And that is all that matters." They returned to their table and sat down to wait for dinner. A man named Marcus Caldwell came to their table. He was in his mid-40s, with kind eyes and a nervous energy about him. "Mrs. Hartwell, it is so good to see you." "Marcus, thank you for being here." He shook Julian's hand. "Mr. Ashford, thank you for all your help. Please call me Julian, and thank you for your bravery. What you are doing is not easy." Marcus glanced around to make sure no one else was close enough to hear. "Tessa's father, Richard Brightwell, is here. I am going to talk to him after dinner. I will show him everything, and let him decide what to do." "Be careful," Becca warned. "Garrett is already suspicious. Patricia warned me as well. I will be. But this has to be done. He needs to know what kind of man he is getting into business with, and what kind of man his daughter is marrying." Marcus nodded and then blended back into the crowd of guests. Becca looked across the room at Garrett. He was talking to Tessa and pointing toward their table. Tessa looked confused and worried. "She thinks I am here to make a scene," Becca said softly. "Well, are you not?" Diane asked. "No," Becca replied. "I am here to make sure the truth comes out." There is a very big difference. Dinner was served. It was a fancy, multi-course meal that likely cost hundreds of dollars for each guest. Becca just picked at her food, her stomach in knots, but the twins ate every bite. Children have a way of being resilient. Soon it was time for the speeches. Tessa's father, Richard Brightwell, a successful and powerful man, stood up first. He talked about his wonderful daughter, how proud he was of her, and how happy he was to welcome Garrett into their family. He also mentioned how much he was looking forward to their new business partnership. Becca watched Garrett start to relax a little, smiling and nodding. He really thought he had gotten away with it. Garrett's mother, Patricia, was the next to speak. She looked exhausted. Her speech was short and cold, without any real warmth. When families come together, we always hope for the best, she said. We hope for honesty, for integrity, and for truth. She looked straight at Becca as she said that last word. The meaning behind her words was perfectly clear. Then the best man, a friend of Garrett's from work, gave his speech. He told a few jokes that made people laugh and talked about Garrett as if he were the most amazing man on earth. Becca felt sick to her stomach. When the speeches finally ended, the music started for the first dance. Garrett and Tessa made their way to the dance floor. They moved together stiffly and awkwardly, like two people who did not really belong together. Becca watched them, but she felt nothing at all. The sadness was gone. The anger was gone. All she felt was a sense of peace. She turned to Julian. "Dance with me?" "Always," he replied. They stood up and walked onto the dance floor. Other couples started to join them, and the floor filled with people. Julian pulled her close, and they swayed together to the sound of some forgettable wedding song. "Are you glad you came?" he asked her. "Yes," she said, "but not for the reasons I thought I would be." "Why then?" "Because I needed to see him with my own eyes. He is not the monster I built up in my mind. He is not the perfect man I once tried so hard to please. He is just a man who makes terrible choices." Julian smiled down at her. "You are an incredible person. You know that?" "I'm trying to believe that." "Try faster," he said gently. She laughed, a real, genuine laugh. Across the dance floor, she saw Tessa watching them. Her expression was impossible to read. Then, for a moment, their eyes met. Have you ever watched a liar's whole world fall apart? Stick around, because this story of sweet justice is completely worth your time. Hit that subscribe button, and like this video if you believe the truth always wins. Right then, a silent, knowing look passed between us. We both knew exactly what Garrett was hiding, but only one of us was about to escape the nightmare. I looked away first. Then, Marcus made his move. 20 minutes later, I watched him approach Richard Brightwell. I saw him gesture toward a quiet corner, and Richard followed close behind. They vanished into a private side room. My heart was pounding out of my chest. This was the exact moment of truth. Julian gently squeezed my hand and whispered that everything was going to be completely okay. 30 minutes crawled by, then 45. To pass the time, I danced with Evan, then Emma, and finally Diane. Julian kept the twins busy all night. He told them funny stories and kept them laughing perfectly. He was so incredibly good with the kids. It felt completely natural, exactly like he had been doing it his whole entire life. Finally, Richard walked back into the main room. His face was made of solid stone. He marched directly over to Tessa and pulled her away from the crowd. Garrett watched them, looking deeply confused and then extremely worried. They spoke in hushed voices. Then, Richard showed Tessa something on his cell phone. All the warm color instantly drained from her pretty face. I could not hear their private words, but the utter devastation was incredibly obvious. Tessa looked at Garrett, then back at her angry father, and then at Garrett one more time. She shook her head in disgust, snapped something incredibly harsh, and turned her back on him forever. Garrett desperately tried to go after her, but Richard aggressively blocked his path. The two men exchanged heated words. Richard stood totally rigid, overflowing with pure protective anger. Garrett went from simply confused to absolutely panicked in a matter of seconds. 10 minutes later, Richard grabbed a microphone to make a sudden announcement. He apologized for interrupting the lovely party, but claimed there was an unexpected family emergency. He firmly stated the reception could continue, but the beautiful bride and her family had to leave immediately. The remaining guests gasped loudly, and a huge wave of confused whispers filled the quiet room. Tessa marched right past Garrett without giving him a single passing glance. Her face was completely blank. You could easily see the deep shock, the harsh betrayal, and the total heartbreak. Garrett tried to run after her again, but Richard fiercely blocked him a second time. Richard whispered something terribly low and sharp. Garrett instantly turned ghost white. The entire Brightwell family rushed out together in one massive, angry wave. The fancy party technically continued, but the happy celebratory energy was completely dead. The remaining guests shifted very awkwardly in their seats. They secretly whispered and widely guessed about what just happened. Did the happy newlyweds have a massive screaming fight? Was the brand new marriage completely over before it even officially started? Garrett stood completely alone in the dead center of his own lavish reception, totally surrounded by a crowd, yet utterly isolated. Patricia tried to gently comfort him, but he angrily brushed her hands away. I calmly gathered the twins and told them it was finally time to go. They had been perfect little angels, and they were very ready for home. Diane grabbed our heavy bags as we headed for the exit doors. Suddenly, Garrett aggressively blocked our path. He hissed fiercely at me, demanding to know exactly what I did. I stopped completely in my tracks. I looked right deeply into his frantic eyes. I simply told him that I just told the exact truth, and nothing else. He loudly accused me of ruining his special wedding day. I shook my head proudly. I boldly told him he ruined his very own wedding. I reminded him he had been lying to absolutely everyone, to me, to lovely Tessa, and most importantly to himself. I explained that I simply stopped hiding his dirty little secrets. He glared hatefully at Julian and sarcastically asked if I really thought Julian was better than him. Julian replied with absolute calm confidence. He said I truly deserved someone who actually saw my real value, whether that was him or somebody else entirely. Garrett looked entirely crushed. He sadly admitted he made a massive mistake with me and claimed he finally saw the truth. I felt a massive, heavy weight totally lift off my tired shoulders. I firmly told him that was his heavy burden to carry, not mine. Not anymore, not ever again. He hopelessly begged, but I quickly cut him off. I told him our marriage was fully done 4 long years ago, and I was finally beautifully accepting it. I proudly walked away without looking back for a single second. Julian and the precious twins walked right beside me, with loyal Diane trailing close behind. The happy kids chatted the entire car ride to the busy airport. They talked endlessly about riding an airplane, the sweet wedding cake they ate, and how beautiful Tessa looked right before she started crying. Little kids truly notice absolutely everything. I stayed very quiet, just peacefully processing the crazy dramatic night. Julian softly asked if I was doing okay. I smiled warmly and told him I really was doing amazing. Once we got comfortably settled on the airplane, Emma fell fast asleep leaning against Julian. Evan held my warm hand very tight. He quietly asked if we did something really bad to his dad. I softly told my sweet baby no. I explained that we just bravely told the truth. I taught him that sometimes the truth hurts people, but it is always much better than living a terrible lie. Evan worriedly asked if his dad was going to be mad at us. I told him that he might be as angry for a little while, but that was never Evan's innocent fault. I explained that anger was just his dad's poor choice. Evan slowly nodded, looking completely satisfied with my honest answer. He sweetly told me he loved me, and I happily told him I loved him too. When we finally got back to our quiet home, I tucked the sleepy twins right into their cozy beds. They were totally exhausted and fell asleep in mere seconds. Diane wrapped me in a huge, incredibly warm hug. She whispered how intensely proud she was of my brave actions. I thanked her for always having my back through everything. She told me to get some well-earned rest and then she quietly headed out. Julian stayed behind with me. We sat comfortably together on the soft sofa in my tiny apartment. The quiet room was so peaceful. He gently asked how I felt. I told him I felt very tired, deeply relieved, and totally free. Free is the absolute best feeling in the world. I slowly turned to properly face him. I thanked him from the bottom of my heart for truly believing in me. I thanked him for being so deeply patient when I was completely terrified of moving forward. He smiled warmly and said I did not ever need to thank him for that. I stubbornly insisted that I did. I reminded him he could have easily walked away at any point over the last 18 months. He could have quickly decided my messy life was too complicated, and I was just way too much hard work. But he loyally stayed through it all. He touched my face and told me I was totally worth staying for. I kissed him then. It was a very slow, deeply sweet kiss, completely packed with immense gratitude, true love, and real bright hope. I shyly asked if he would stay the whole night. He smiled big and said he was really hoping I would ask him that. We lay comfortably in bed, not even sleeping at first, just perfectly enjoying our quiet peace together. I asked him what happens next for us. He simply said, "Whatever I wonderfully wanted." We agreed to take our fresh new life exactly one single day at a time. No heavy, stressful pressure, no crazy, wild expectations, just us being happily together. I told him I really deeply loved the beautiful sound of that. He completely agreed. I happily fell safely asleep, wrapped up in his strong arms. For the very first time in 4 long years, I did not have a single terrible nightmare. Instead, I beautifully dreamed about open welcoming doors, bright, endless possibilities, and a gorgeous, happy future that finally totally belonged to me. Early the very next morning, my cell phone started ringing loudly. The screen clearly showed an unknown mysterious number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I curiously picked it up. A quiet, shaking voice politely asked for Mrs. Hartwell. It was Tessa Brightwell, or maybe just simply Tessa now. I sat straight up in my bed. She awkwardly apologized for bothering me and explained she bravely grabbed my private number from Garrett's phone. I kindly told her it was completely fine. I gently asked if she was holding up okay after everything. Tessa let out a very sad, deeply bitter laugh. She honestly said she was not okay, even a little bit. But she bravely called me for a very specific, important reason. She really wanted to sincerely say thank you. She thanked me endlessly for finally exposing the ugly, painful truth. Her smart father showed her all the hard, solid proof: the massive, illegal financial fraud, the hidden secret money, the countless terrible lies. She fully admitted she had zero actual idea about any of it. I softly told her I was so incredibly sorry she had to find out that horrible way on our big wedding day. She quickly fired back that it was much better than finding out 5 long years later, after completely wasting more of her precious life and having innocent kids with him. She paused for a very long, quiet moment. Then she sadly admitted that I tried to kindly warn her 4 long years ago when she first started dating Garrett. I softly agreed. I said she just did not want to hear my warning back then. She sadly fully agreed with my memory. She confessed she foolishly thought I was just a bitterly jealous, angry ex-wife. She offered a deep, incredibly sincere, emotional apology. I kindly told her she did not owe me one single apology, but she strongly insisted. She admitted she was genuinely horrible to me back then. She actively helped wreck my whole marriage, knowing full well he was a taken married man. She tearfully said she just did not care at the time. She arrogantly thought she was magically special, and that he truly loved her in a magical way he never loved me. I gently told her that now she fully knew the real painful truth. She cried softly and said yes. Now she finally knew. She sadly realized Garrett does not actually love anyone at all. He just selfishly uses good people for his own personal gain. And the absolute second they stop being useful to him, he cruelly throws them away and moves right along. I told Tessa I was truly very sorry for her deep pain. Her shaking voice cracked as she said she had to go because her dad's legal team was busy aggressively handling the official marriage annulment. Before she finally hung up the phone, she said something I will absolutely never forget. She told me I completely saved her from making the exact same miserable, tragic mistakes I did. She thanked me one last time and ended the sad call. I just sat quietly on the edge of the bed, holding the silent phone, staring blankly at nothing at all. Julian walked sleepy out of the bedroom and asked if everything was perfectly all right. I smiled and told him that was actually Tessa on the phone. She called to sincerely thank me for totally ruining her fancy, expensive wedding, because it fully saved her from a completely toxic, terrible marriage. Julian sat down right closely beside me. He gently asked how that surprising call made me feel inside. I smiled wide and said it felt extremely good, completely settled, and mostly just a huge, beautiful relief. He hugged me tight and said that made perfect, wonderful sense. I leaned happily against his strong shoulder and finally took a huge, deep breath. Fast forward exactly 3 months later, and my whole entire world had completely, miraculously transformed. The final official divorce settlement gracefully went through. The final financial settlement was incredibly perfectly fair. Actually, it was way more than just fair. Garrett's fancy, expensive lawyers tried to fight it hard, but our solid, overwhelming evidence was just entirely too much to beat. I finally, rightfully got absolutely everything I should have gotten 4 long, miserable years ago. The old, beautiful house was officially sold off. All the hidden secret assets were properly, perfectly divided up. The monthly child support checks went significantly up, and the legal custody was correctly officially renegotiated to exactly 50-50. My amazing lawyer Jennifer happily called me with the great breaking news. She cheered loudly and excitedly told me that we totally finally won, but honestly, I did not truly feel like I had magically won any grand prize. I just felt completely wonderfully free, and that was a million times better than simply winning. I officially happily quit my exhausting second side job. I kept my main good job, but now I finally actually had real room to breathe. I had wonderful free space and massive quality time with my precious kids. The resilient twins adjusted really wonderfully. They started seeing Garrett regularly on a strict schedule now. He seemed like a totally, completely different person. He was much quieter, deeply humbled, or maybe just completely, totally broken inside. I honestly did not know, and I truly did not care to ever find out. Julian was happily around the house a whole lot more now. He officially met my closest best friends, my whole loving family, and absolutely everyone who really mattered to me. The twins absolutely completely adored him. They always respectfully called him Julian, never ever Dad, but he was undeniably a huge, beautiful part of our happy little family now. I happily started hunting for a brand new, better apartment. I looked for much bigger places in really nice, safe, upscale neighborhoods. I could comfortably, easily afford it, all by myself now. Julian sweetly, generously offered to help pay, but I politely, gently declined. I proudly told him I needed to do this entirely on my own. Still, I really deeply appreciated his kind, beautiful offer. One sunny, crisp Saturday morning, I was happily cooking a big, hot breakfast. The cute kids were loudly watching television, and Julian was peacefully reading the morning paper. It was perfectly domestic, wonderfully, wonderfully normal, and absolutely beautiful. Emma yelled cheerfully from the living room, asking if Julian could please teach her how to properly draw on the computer. She remembered he promised to show her if he had the free time. Julian smiled huge and happily shouted back that he definitely had plenty of time. Evan eagerly looked up from his little digital tablet and asked if they could all please visit the big cool science museum next weekend to see a fun new exhibit on neat patterns. Julian happily instantly agreed and promised to make a whole completely fun day out of it. I just stood quietly there, happily watching them. My amazing smart kids, my wonderful loving partner, my perfectly nicely messy life. It was not a flawless, perfect fairy tale, but it was all completely mine. And that meant the absolute entire world to me. Then, exactly 3 months after that crazy, disastrous wedding, a fancy, expensive cream envelope arrived in the Daily Mail. My happy stomach did a huge nervous flip when I clearly saw the familiar return address. But when I carefully, bravely sliced it open, it was not some awful legal threat or trick. It was a completely perfectly fair settlement final offer. It included a full, totally honest list of every single hidden asset, a perfectly even fair division, and absolutely everything I had originally politely asked for. Tucked inside was a totally handwritten sad note from Garrett. The emotional letter said, "I was right about absolutely everything, and he was deeply genuinely sorry. He wrote that he did not ever expect me to ever actually forgive him. He just wanted me to finally know that he finally clearly saw the ugly truth about what he did and exactly who he was. He fully admitted he was probably still that same terribly flawed guy, but he was desperately, sincerely trying to be a better decent man for our precious kids." He ended the sad letter by truly thanking me for never giving up on our lovely children, even when he foolishly totally gave up on absolutely everything else. I read the heavy emotional words twice, then quietly, softly set the paper down. Julian was busy happily cooking breakfast. The rowdy twins were loudly arguing over who got to use the bathroom first. I looked happily around my gorgeous, amazing new apartment. It was so much bigger, bright, and incredibly airy, with huge, wonderful windows that let in beautiful, warm, real sunlight. I proudly signed the big lease just last week and happily moved our stuff in yesterday. Brown cardboard moving boxes were still happily stacked everywhere, but this beautiful place was mine, all completely wonderfully mine. Julian flipped a pancake and gently asked if I was doing perfectly okay. He was doing a terrible, awful job cooking. The messy pancakes were totally funny and lopsided. I smiled huge and said yes. I was just peacefully processing things. He curiously asked what was in the fancy letter. I calmly told him it was the final settlement offer from Garrett, along with a real sincere apology. Julian raised his eyebrows in absolute shock. He said that was incredibly, deeply unexpected. I nodded in total agreement. He gently, softly asked how I felt about the whole surprising thing. I took a long moment and really searched my deep heart. I honestly completely told him I really did not need his apology anymore. But I happily added that I was genuinely very glad he was finally actively trying to be a decent father to the kids, because that is what truly, really matters. Julian smiled warmly and sweetly called me a very generous, kind woman. I shook my head proudly and told him I was just completely wonderfully free, and there is a massive, huge difference. Just then, the loud twins came running out, still bickering silly about who claimed the bathroom first. Emma eagerly, excitedly asked if they could finally eat some hot pancakes. Julian laughed loud and said that was exactly what he was successfully making. Evan bluntly, honestly pointed out that the messy pancakes looked incredibly ugly. I started to quickly scold Evan for being a little rude, but Julian just burst out laughing completely. He happily told Evan he was 100% correct, but they still tasted absolutely amazing. And that is what really counts. We all sat happily down together at my tiny, old, wobbly kitchen table. I knew I would definitely buy a nice brand new one eventually, but not quite yet. This funny little old table held our real history, our beautiful memories. Always remember, the truth might be hard, but it will always perfectly set you free. Right after breakfast, Diane gave me a call. She asked, "How's the new place?" I told her, "It's good. I'm still unpacking, but it feels good." She immediately offered, "Do you need any help?" I laughed and said, "Always." An hour later, Diane showed up with coffee, donuts, and her kids. Suddenly, the quiet apartment was filled with life. The kids were running around, the adults were unpacking, and music was playing. It was chaos, but it was a beautiful kind of chaos. I just stood in the middle of it all, watching. I realized this is what peace really felt like. Then, the doorbell rang. Julian went to get it. It was Marcus Caldwell, and he was holding a bottle of wine. He said, "I hope this is okay. I just wanted to stop by and congratulate you on the new place." I smiled and told him, "Come on in." "You're always welcome here," I said. Marcus stepped inside, took a look around, and smiled. "You did it," he said. "You really did it." I corrected him gently. "No, we did it. You were a big part of this too." He shook his head. "I just gave you the evidence. You did all the hard work. You survived." We talked for a little while about Garrett's business, the consequences of his actions, and the slow process of rebuilding. "Garrett stepped down," Marcus told me. "The board made him leave. The business is recovering, but it's going to take time. I think we'll make it." I told him, "I'm glad," and I truly was. After about an hour, Marcus left, promising he would keep in touch. That same evening, Patricia called. The conversation was short and a little awkward, but it was sincere. She said, "Rebecca, I wanted to thank you for what you did." I was confused. "For Garrett?" I asked. "I know it doesn't look like it helped him, but it did. He is finally facing the consequences for his actions. He is finally growing up." I replied, "He's your son." "You do not have to thank me for that," she insisted. "Yes, I do. You could have destroyed him. You could have sent him to prison, and you would have had every right. But instead, you chose mercy. That shows incredible strength." I was speechless and did not know what to say. "I hope you are happy," Patricia continued. "You really deserve to be happy." I told her, "I am working on it." She replied, "Good. That is good." Then Patricia hung up. I just stared at my phone, completely amazed. It felt like my whole world had been turned right side up that night. Later, after the twins were sound asleep, Julian and I sat on my new balcony. It was small, but it had a view of a park with trees, grass, and wide open space. I had never had a balcony before. I turned to him and said, "Tell me something. Anything." He looked at me. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Getting involved with me and all of my chaos?" He answered without a moment of hesitation. "Never. Not for a single second." I pushed a little. "Even when I was pushing you away?" He smiled. "Especially then, because that was when you needed someone the most." I leaned against him and breathed in his scent. It was a mix of soap and coffee, and it smelled like home. "I love you," I said. It was the first time I had said the words out loud, and the first time I had truly admitted it to myself. He replied, "I love you too." He had said it to me many times before, but hearing it in that moment felt different. It felt real and solid and true. We sat there in the quiet for a while, just watching the sunset. He asked me, "What do you want? For the future? For us?" I answered honestly, "This. Just this. You, the kids, and peace. I want normal, boring days where nothing dramatic ever happens." He smiled and said, "That sounds perfect." I agreed. "It does not it?" We went inside to bed, ready for sleep. But just before I drifted off, I checked my phone one last time. There was a text from Tessa. It said, "I just wanted to let you know that I am okay. Actually, I am better than okay. I am going back to school for art history." Her text continued, "It is something I always wanted to do, but I never felt like I had the time. Thank you for showing me that I could start over. You showed me that it is never too late." I smiled and typed back a reply. "You are going to do amazing things. I believe in you." I put my phone down, closed my eyes, and suddenly realized something important. I had spent 4 years waiting for Garrett to see my value. But the truth was, his opinion of me never mattered. The only opinion that ever mattered was my own. And for the first time, I finally saw myself clearly. I was not just someone's ex-wife, or someone's mother, or someone's girlfriend. I was just myself, Rebecca Hartwell, 38 years old. I was a survivor, a fighter, a mother, a partner, and a friend. I was imperfect and flawed and sometimes scared, but I was enough. I was always enough. I fell asleep with a smile on my face and dreamed of open roads. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen. It was not the tiny, cramped kitchen from my old apartment. This was a real kitchen, in a real house. I bought it 6 months ago with the money from my settlement. It was my money, earned and deserved. The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard where the twins could play. It was not a huge house, and it was not fancy, but it was all mine. The twins were in the backyard, playing with their new puppy. It was a golden retriever that Emma had named Sunshine. Julian was at the stove, and he was actually cooking. He had gotten much better at it. His pancakes were no longer lopsided. Diane was setting the table for a family dinner. Everyone was coming over. All the people who truly mattered in my life. Emma called from outside, "Mom, when is dinner?" I called back, "In 20 minutes." I looked around at my life, at my people, and at my home. People say that the best revenge is living well, but that was not completely right. I realized the best revenge was not getting revenge at all. It was realizing you did not need it. It was about building a life so full of joy, a life so complete and so genuinely happy that the past had no power to touch it. It was understanding that the person who hurt me no longer had any control because I had taken my power back. Garrett had sent me a text last week. He asked if the kids could come to his birthday party. He was turning 41 and wanted to celebrate with them. I said yes, of course. They were his kids too. I did not hate him anymore. I did not love him either. I hardly ever thought about him at all. He was just somebody that I used to know. He was someone who helped to teach me one of the most important lessons in life. Your worth is never defined by the people who are unable to see it. The doorbell rang. "I will get it," Julian said. It was Patricia and Lydia and Marcus and Jennifer, my lawyer, who had become a good friend. They were my tribe, my people. They filled the house with laughter and stories and so much warmth. Dinner was chaotic. The kids were talking over each other. The adults were telling jokes. Wine was being poured, and food was disappearing. It was perfect and messy and real. After dinner, Emma climbed into my lap. She was getting too big for lap sitting, but I did not care. "Mom," Emma said. "Yeah, baby?" I answered. She looked at me and asked, "Are you happy?" I looked around the room, at Julian doing the dishes. I saw Evan showing Marcus his math project, and Diane laughing with Jennifer. I looked at my full, loud, chaotic house. "Yes, baby," I said. "I really am." She smiled. "Good. Me too." That night, after everyone had left and the kids were asleep, I found myself in the bathroom. I was in the same position as I was a year ago, sitting on the floor with my back against the tub. But this time was different. I was not having a panic attack. I was crying, but they were good tears. They were healing tears. Julian found me there and sat down right beside me. He did not ask any questions. He just sat with me. Finally, I said, "I made it." He nodded. "You did." I whispered, "I survived." He corrected me. "You did more than survive. You thrived," he said. I leaned my head on his shoulder and just breathed. "Thank you," I whispered. He asked, "For what?" I told him, "For seeing me when I could not see myself." He replied softly, "Always." We sat there together on the bathroom floor in our imperfect house, with our imperfect lives. And I realized something. This was it. This was everything I had been searching for. It was not revenge, or validation, or even justice. It was just peace, just love, just freedom, just myself. And that was, and always would be, enough. So that is my story. It is the story of the day I stopped being invisible. It is the day I took my power back. If this story connects with you, if you have ever felt small, or worthless, or forgotten, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think you are. If you enjoyed coming on this journey with me, please hit that like button. It really helps more people find these stories, people who might need to hear them. Please drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a moment where you finally stood up for yourself? A moment where you said, "Enough is enough." I read every single one of your comments, and I love hearing your stories. And if you want to hear more stories about survival, about strength, and about second chances, please subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. I share new stories every single week about real struggles, real transformations, and real hope. Please share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Maybe it is that friend who is going through a divorce, or your sister who is rebuilding her life. Maybe it is that woman who forgot how powerful she truly is. Your support means the world to me. Every like, every comment, and every share helps us build this community of survivors. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And always remember, your worth was never defined by those who could not see it. Until next time, keep fighting, keep surviving, and keep thriving. You have got this.